Hello friends, and welcome to episode 160 of the Noclip Crewcast. How you doing? How are things? We are back. We are no longer wandering the streets of Los Angeles, attempting to create content in the tiny window we have in between filming lots of things. We're back home in our abodes, hopefully with better audio, and we're here to talk to you about a bunch of games. But as I wandered into the document this morning, it was confirmed. My greatest fear is that for the first time in God knows how long, all three of us have played the same game coming into. We have other games in here, of course, but all three of us somehow, the tendrils of this media beast, this all-encompassing new IP, has managed to invade and also take over our humble podcast. I am, of course, talking about Gary Jules's Palworld. We'll be talking about Palworld on this podcast today. But first of all, let's introduce our beautiful crew of people here. Jeremy Jane, welcome back to Northern California. What's your favorite Pal?
I like Meowth is a good one. I think they call him.
Oh man.
Pikachu is pretty good.
No.
Oh, are those not the?
No. Oh shit.
I didn't check the name, but I assumed because I recognized them immediately. Is that not right?
Have you caught a Hoocrates yet?
I have.
Yeah, I thought you might like that one.
Yeah, was it? Did it have two O's? I thought it was Hocrates, and I thought it was
Hocrates too.
I was wondering if that was like a mistranslation thing, or like they were. I could picture the conversation in the studio where they're like, "Well, Socrates only has one O, but who?"
Hocrates, yeah. But it looks like an owl, so I'm guessing. I called it Hoocrates in the quick look, but
I called him Hocrates because he.
I called him Hocrates because he's a hoe.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was just about to say.
Yeah. That's what I have him doing at my base. Frank Howley, speaking of hoes, Frank Howley, what is your favorite Pal?
I do like the Depresso, and then I do.
Oh, yeah.
And then I like the penguin design, but I think it's just Pengullet or Pendulette. That one?
I call it Pendulette.
Pendulette.
Yeah.
That's so funny.
Because the first time I read it, I saw Pendulette, and I was like, that's probably not what it's meant to be, but that's where my brain's gone. I've also gone from, for the first week of playing this game, I was every time I thought about Palworld, I thought about Spoon Man. So I was going straight into Palworld. But now I'm in the Gary Jules mindset. Now it's Palworld. Not the Tears for Fears one. I'm talking about the one they put on in Donnie Darko. The
Mad
Gears
World?
Is that the
reference?
Of Mad World.
Okay,
exactly.
okay.
Yes.
Gotcha. That's pretty good.
Palworld. That's how Depresso thinks about it.
All around me are familiar faces because they're all Pokemon designs.
Oh no!
Worn out places because the environment design is so boring.
Because it's the environment design is Breath of the Wild.
Exactly. Wow, that song was about Palworld like 20 years early.
It was.
That's
Who
awesome.
Knew? He was the Hoocrates of his time.
A real Hocrates.
Hocrates. All right, fuck. Shout out to our amazing Battle Pass holders. Harry Flanagan, Battle Royale Games, Ardo, Richard Matherson, James Brown, Jason Drury, Mark Rojas, Ryan Cobb, Tucker Morgan, Crimson Cyclist, Sven Huster, Tim Robinson, Forrest Pruitt, Eric Hamilton Schneider, Cameron Ladd, it's my favorite pal, Alex Sharp, Alex Goucher, George Sakotis, Jacob Godserve, Tohir Teliev, and Ryson. Thank you all so much for supporting our work over here at patreon.com/noclip. Reminder to everyone that we have the absolute scammers that we are. We have set up a second Patreon. It's a free Patreon. It's basically to test out the whole concept of Noclip Crew. We're going to give it 3 months. We're going to throw a bunch of stuff up there where we're working on some quick looks. This is basically Noclip stuff that's not documentary. It's just us having a good time talking about games that we like. Producing videos. We have a bunch of quick looks up there. We have a bunch of we have our first fat session which is a 7-hour VOD. The first one is all about just one of us sitting down playing a game for the whole goddamn day. The first episode is Jeremy playing Heroes of Might and Magic 3. Jeremy, it's been a lot of fun listening to people sort of slowly watching it over days and coming to different parts of it and being like, oh, I'm at this part of the thing.
There's a good bit where I realized that this is spoiling a bit, but it's okay. I think it's worth it to get, if it gets 2 people more to watch it, it's worth it. So I was saving constantly to avoid ruining the game because it would be embarrassing to ruin a Let's Play like 3 hours in for, it's not a very fat session.
It's fair.
It's just a barely chunky session. And I was saving this because I was save scumming. The naming convention was Jer Scum.
Okay.
And I realized
Fair.
3.5 hours in that it looks identical to
Jer's Cum.
And I realized I had been typing that for 3.5 hours on a public forum. So
beautiful.
You can look forward to that and many other realizations on the first fat session.
Yes, and if you're a patron of Noclip Crew, you'll get first access to jars of Jer's Cum when they're available.
No,
no,
you will not.
Okay.
We've removed that tier.
Okay, Patreon stopped. Yeah, they came down on.
We got a letter from them.
Exactly. Very sticky one. We're going to basically try that thing out. I've realized that I think I can secretly DM everyone because you can't do free patron exclusive things on there. Although we can do stuff like unlist videos and then just give them to them. So we're going to do a bunch of that fuckery. We're collaborating with a bunch of people who are very cool. We have a bunch of folks, let's just say some of the internet's most celebrated video essayists. We have a bunch of them lined up to do some fun videos with us. Not video essays, but to do episodes of my the old show I did on Giant Bomb a while back ago, Guilty Treasures, where I talk to people about obscure games that they really like and interviewed about them. We have a bunch of people around the US who are sort of big in that space who are down to be part of that. I have a series with I'm trying to get together a series with an old colleague of mine who seems to be down to do it, who hasn't done video stuff in a long while, or kind of. He's kind of focusing on some other bits and bobs, but I think he's down to do that. So we have a bunch of actual we're doing the quick look stuff. It's not filler, but it's definitely more sort of off the hip type of things. We have some goddamn series ideas. Me and Jeremy are talking about doing a show where we review movies. You had a great idea of filming it outside in the barn out here. And
like a drive-in theater style.
Yeah, just like hillbilly drive-in theater, just a sheet up on the barn and we project some shit on it. Yeah. So we're going to try out some of this stuff and see if it's cool and try and build up the members over there on that free Patreon and see if people are interested in it and if it's worthwhile. And if it is, then we'll pull the trigger on it later this year. So yeah, if you like us and want to see us do well and you think that's stuff that's interesting, then head over to that, join up as a free member. And all that happens is you get emails every once in a while when we post something. That's it. And you can comment and stuff like that. But, yeah, we'll be doing feedback and polling the community over there. So any help you can give us in that respect, we would really appreciate it. A lot of irons in the fire over here. We keep it busy. We'll talk about the documentaries we're working on at the moment. There's a lot going on. We obviously were filming in LA last week. We're filming a lot over the next couple of months. GDC is coming up. DICE is coming up. I'm going to be going to that. So we've loads of irons in the fire. But for now, let's talk about the game that's on the tip of everyone's lips, Palworld. This game came out of nowhere. It has the most unbelievably beautifully generic name imaginable. It's created by a developer called Pocket Pair Incorporated, which we'll talk a little bit about their priors probably in a little while. Based out of they are Japanese, am I right in saying?
Yeah,
Jeremy?
I believe they're in
I
Tokyo.
think they are. And the game came out, it's in early access. It was released on January 18th. So while we were filming, and I came back and everyone was talking about Palworld. How best to describe Palworld? Can I go first, maybe? I'll just throw it in the... Okay, I would say Palworld is... The most obvious visual identifier that you will pick up on is they have Pokemon-looking monsters that you collect by throwing balls at them. And that's right on the nose. The actual gameplay of the game is almost nothing like a Pokemon game. It's more survival craft, like Ark, tech trees, upgrading a base, that type of thing. It also has a lot of these sort of automation base stuff. Like the game I was trying to think about during the quick look, Frank, was Ooblets. Do you
Oh
remember
yeah, yeah,
Ooblets is like
yeah.
yeah. So like something like that, or like like my old ass was like, oh, a bit like Viva Pinata or something. But like this is one where you're basically using your pals to also like automate a base so that you can sort of upgrade your shit and do stuff like that. But the other aesthetic hook that this game has is that the world itself is very Breath of the Wild, very Tears of the Kingdom, very New Zelda, down from the chimes and UI that pops up when you enter a new area. I swear to God, I would love to do a side by side in my brain. They're the exact same as Zelda. The world itself, I think, is very inspired by Zelda, and like also just like Elden Ring, just the idea of like showing everything right in front of you, big plateaus, lots of height. So of course, because of that, there's climbing pulled straight from Zelda. There's the hang glider thing, so you can descend from high heights. But definitely the most egregious aspect of this is the Pokemon stuff. And I think because of that, there's been a big sort of wave of Pokemon fans kind of looking to catch this game out. And there's been a couple of swings and misses on it. I think like just on the face of it, it's clearly fucking ripping off Pokemon. Also, guess what? A lot of people ripped off Pokemon during the 90s. A lot of cartoons.
And
shit.
Pokemon also comes out of ripoffs of other intellectual property as well.
Oh, funny.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's muddy, but then there was like there was a couple of days where people were like, oh, the AI generated all these characters. That sort of seemed to disappear pretty quickly. I don't think there was much proof of that. Then there was a couple of days ago, there was some chatter about that they had basically used the models from one of the Pokemon games. I don't know where they got those models from, but that they were the amount of vertices that were similar, like in terms of the height of them and their spacings and all that sort of stuff, was super suspect. I've heard from some people that now that is not necessarily also accurate. I don't know. It's hard to tell, but this whole thing is in flux at the moment. There's obviously a lot of passion around it, and the reason why is this game has sold an insane amount. It is now the second highest concurrent record. The only game that's had more concurrent players than this is PUBG back in whatever it was, 2020 or whatever it was. PUBG had its big moment, maybe 2018, I forget. So it's surpassed the concurrent rate from Dota, from Counter-Strike, Global Offensive. It's pretty crazy. Jeremy, first of all, I talked to Frank about this in a quick look. He's played a bit about what do you make of this whole thing? I also like don't give a shit about Pokemon. I've tried to enjoy those games and never have. Are you a fan of them going back, and what do you make of this thing?
So I'm not a Pokemon fan. I played Pokemon Red, and I've like dabbled in a couple of other ones. I'm super not a Pokemon fan. Have not played a lot of them at all. In Pokemon Red was one of the formative RPGs of my child. I remember like getting it for the holidays and sitting on the stairs playing it on my Game Boy Pocket for hours. But other than that, like no particular allegiance to Pokemon or anything. And also like the idea that if Palworld or Pocket Pair or whatever were stealing Pokemon designs, which, clearly there is a blurry line between like taking inspiration and like ripping off, obviously.
Yes.
I would say they're traipsing all over the line, but I don't think anything illegal was done. And also like it's Nintendo and like and Pokemon, like that's some of the most litigious people in games. Like I think they're fine they can handle it. However, so yeah, I've been like following the discourse around this and stuff, and I haven't found much of it compelling in the idea that they've stolen stuff. However, I virulently dislike this game. I do not like this.
Really?
I really
just like divorced from the
totally
sort of
divorced
the
from
plagiarism.
All of this.
So this is it. I'm very interested in this because I think I might. I've played a lot of this game.
Yeah.
I have never felt so Skinner boxed in my life. But
Dude,
please, I'm excited to hear what you got to say about this.
I have a lot of notes here. I didn't want to like come into this like a debate and or I didn't want to Ben Shapiro my notes together. I just wanted to like come in here and kind of unpack my feelings with you guys a little bit. It feels okay. So first of all, for context, Pocket Pair, if you look at some of their other games, someone linked Nevergrave, one of their previous games in our Discord. And if you Google Nevergrave real quick, it is another very transparent ripoff, this time of Hollow Knight.
Yeah, the Hollow Knight looking one. Yeah.
It does have some mechanical differences, obviously, as Palworld does from Pokemon games and from Breath of the Wild. But yeah, I mean, there's like a precedent that this is a studio whose bread and butter is taking other people's ideas and kind of like tweaking them a little bit. But I don't know. That being said, is like there's a discussion to be had around originality. Like, is originality worthwhile in its own right? Is it like a worthwhile goal in its own right? I have a quote here from I've cropped off his first name, Mizobe, the lead of Pocket Pair, where he says, "I've always loved Nintendo games and that hasn't changed. I also deeply respect them. However, when it comes to making games, Nintendo has a strong philosophy of creating new and unique games with high quality, and this was questioned at the Nintendo Game Seminar. On the other hand, I have a deep-rooted desire for my work to be enjoyed by as many people as possible. And to that end, if there are good ideas in the world, I pick them up, and I don't necessarily have to be particular about originality. I'm thinking about it. I want to make it more casually. I think it would be a good idea to create things in a way that just jumps on what is trendy." Which, like, I don't know. I don't think that's like a necessarily, like, it's not an indictment to be like, this guy's committed to being unoriginal. But that being said, I do feel like this is one of the most swagless and sauceless games I've ever played in my life. It's just like the Skinner boxness of it is transparent. Like, even if you enjoy the game, it's fine to be like, yeah, it's Skinner boxy. But I think the thing that distinguishes it from games like Dave the Diver, which also is very transparently Skinner boxy.
Yes, that's true. Which we talked about a lot during the Game of the Year stuff. Yeah.
Exactly. And people who listen to the Game of the Year stuff know I was very critical of those elements of that game. However, I do think Dave the Diver has an original vision. I think it's trying to do something. I think it's trying to like create moments. I think it's trying to create characters. I think it's trying to create atmosphere. And Palworld to me feels like every element of it is so transparently lifted from something else that it doesn't feel like I cannot identify a single element of this game where I feel like a conversation happened where they were like, and this is our unique spice that we're bringing to the table. It just feels so like the first thing you do is pick up a Sheikah slate from Breath of the Wild. It's like so fucking transparent, and it pisses me off. And like, and I also, before I'll throw it back to you guys in a second, I have a million other things to say, but like, sure. The thing that I think is important about this conversation is that, like, I prefer to talk about things I like. I think that that's a better way to, if you're going to like talk about media and about games and art and stuff, I think it's better to focus on stuff you like. I think it's more productive. I think it yields better conversation. I also don't want to shame anyone for playing this game. I don't think the onus is on. It's kind of like yelling at like you for throwing like a can in the wrong bin when there's like corporations dumping
or talking about telling people why they shouldn't like a band or something.
It's exactly. Like, it is so subjective. But that being said, I think it is important to be critical of this game and to talk critically about it because of the magnitude of its success, because of the fact that it has more peak concurrent players than Dota 2 and TF2 and Baldur's Gate 3. Yeah, it's important to be critical.
That's why we're talking about it.
Exactly. I just wanted to contextualize like why I'm being a hater.
So I like. So here's the thing: is I think on any other day this game doesn't sell as much as it does. None of us ever fucking notice it, right? And there are dozens of games like this. This is Steam. This is the Nintendo eShop. If you go on the Nintendo, the idea of making derivative ass games is very popular. We just don't tend to cover them. Like, that's just, it doesn't cross our sort of viewpoint. Obviously, this one's been forced in front of us, and because it is like deriving, some artistic elements from some of the most popular things around, right? Breath of the Wild and Pokemon and Ark or Valheim games or whatever, any survival craft, take your pick. I think Ark is probably the closest one to. Which again makes sense. Ark is the most popular one of those, I'm pretty sure. Because of that, it feels so egregious, and I think it's because I was trying to think about this, and I'm thinking about it a lot, where there are lots of games that do Pokemon-y stuff, like Temtem. Was a Pokemon game, but it was an MMO, right? Yeah. And Ooblets is very Pokemon-y, but like Ooblets looks like its own game. It has its own, story, and the look of it is completely like it looks. If anything, it looks like a sort of a Phenomena game or a Keita Takahashi because we're looking game. You could say it's like pulling from that. Even Bug Snacks is like a parody of that type of stuff, right? But they all have their own flavor. This game is like, what is it? It's like Cheesecake Factory. It's like we do it all.
It's a big menu and not much else.
No, big menu. Yeah. We don't have an identity. Our identity is if you want a burger or pasta or a pizza or soup, we fucking got you covered. Don't worry about it. And I think it's like super jarring. I think I enjoy this. I think the way the loop of the game, I think, is really good. I like exploring games like this. This is how I played. I was playing World of Warcraft Classic the whole way through winter, and then I just easily transitioned into this because I was like, oh yeah, I just want to walk around places and fucking collect shit. I like seeing the new designs. I think the designs of the creatures they're not like they're kind of ramshackle all over the place, but I'm interested in them. Like I'm like, oh, they all look fucked up and weird, and that's kind of interesting and weird and cool. And the tech tree stuff is compelling, and I've been enjoying it. But I think one of the reasons I'm enjoying it so much is because of the reasons you hate it. It's the same thing where I just find this to be such a like, it's not an artistic void, but it's like, it feels like I'm playing a game that is at any moment going to be shut down because it's like, I shouldn't. The fact that it's on Game Pass blew me away because it's the most like derivative AAA, or not AAA, I shouldn't say that. It's the most derivative, like successful game that's on consoles and everything. And this game is still earned access, we should mention, that I've ever played. And I'm just fascinated by it. I'm just like, this is fucking crazy. Like, am I going to turn a corner like 4 hours into this and be like, oh, you can, it's interesting. The fact that also, like, I think the fact that you could do stuff, I didn't realize you could capture humans.
Oh, yeah.
And then you can do fucked up stuff there. Like, there's a sort of we're taking your favorite games and we're going to do stuff with them like that you're never going to see in the games. When I unlocked the rocket launcher ability for the penguin, I was like, well, okay. Where is this game going? Like, what the fuck's going on?
I just feel like, Frank, I want to throw it to Frank next because I'm so curious what you think of this game. I just have to say that, like, the like, I have seen people make the satire defense of this game and be like, oh, it's subversive. It's like sticking it to Nintendo or Game Freak or whatever. And it just feels to me like the satire of it is so thin that it feels to me like, I don't know, like a Newgrounds skit, like a Newgrounds skit where like Mario is being racist or something, and it's like, oh yeah, I get it for a second, and then it moves on. But the fact that like it's like if racist Mario was a $30 skit on Newgrounds, and you were like paying for it, and it had 5 billion people, you know what I mean? Like there's something. Well, I don't know.
It's like if people. Sorry, I will go to you in a second, Frank. It's like if. We have these breakout games like Valheim, breakout game, right? Really crazy that satisfactory, for Coffee Stain. I mean, Goat Simulator for Coffee Stain probably more than anything else. But you have these games that like they blow up, and I'm not just picking studios from that one town in Sweden. They're both based, but I got it. They're in my mind at the moment. But you and everyone wants to sell lots of copies of their games, right? 100%. But like you. Whenever those things happen, it feels like, oh, they met the audience. The audience met them. They had this idea, and then it resonated with the audience in some sort of an organic way where it was their vision, and then the game sort of, found the market and it worked, and that was great. This game feels like it was fucking designed to sell as much as it's.
I guess like, that's the problem. Is like it's
yes, that was the point.
Media,
is what it feels like.
Games in general, but like media largely. But let's just talk about games. There's kind of like a seduction or a con game that has to happen where it's like when I play Palworld, I feel like I'm at a bar and someone is coming up and they're trying to have sex with me, but instead of coming up and like, there's no pretense of being like, hey, like what are your interests? I really like that hat you're wearing. They're just like, hey, why don't you come in the bathroom with me and I'll show you. And it's just like, Jesus Christ, dude, like chill out. I don't know, man. I have a lot more to say, but yeah, I'm so curious.
It's like if you were playing Game Dev Hero and you're like making your game and you put all of the points into just sell, man.
Yes, it just feels
sell.
Like there's something. It makes me feel very cynical when I play a game that feels like every element of it is designed not because someone was pouring heart and soul into those design elements because they love video games, but because they were trying to either like short circuit my brain into dumping dopamine by giving me clear telegraphed tasks with like a derivative UI that has them all listed, and or trying to make them recognizable elements of other games so that my brain is like, oh, it's like Breath of the Wild. Oh, it's like Pokemon. Oh, it's like Ark. I just feel like every element of this game is so clearly calculated as a marketing decision. It feels like a game made by like marketing people. And that
But here's the thing is that, but like, I disagree because they fucking nailed it. Like,
Did they
this game
though?
plays really
dude?
well. This game, yes, from a programming perspective, divorce yourself from the ethics and morality from this. The game runs fucking really well.
Right, but does
the
it
game controls really well?
I disagree. I think okay, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I mean, how can you disagree with that? Like, the game, it's from a small team.
Yeah.
It's from a team. If you look at like Craftopia and stuff they've made before, this is fucking leaps and bounds. It runs really well. It's doing a lot of computational stuff. The earth, the land is like, it's like interesting to get, for me anyway, it's interesting to get around. They've produced shitloads of models. Like, I think this is what makes it more worrying, is that like for years and years and years, the type of thing like we see in mobile games, this shit all the time, right? You see like, oh, you just get some 2D art from some really talented artist, you throw it in on like something that's like super derivative and it sells loads of money, and then you make the free version and then you do the other version and in-game apps and all this sort of stuff, right? And that's largely not happened in like sort of the real video game world, because the amount of competency you need to make a game at this level requires you to be able to do things like understand, like get it to run properly, have really good animation, have really good this, that, and the other. And like the game that is out, like it runs really well and plays well and looks decent and like does all the things that those games never did before. And I think that's the scary part, is that this feels like an actual video game, but it has the vibe of sort of that type of skitterboxy mobile thing where I'm like, I feel a little bit dirty playing this, but I'm in on the joke, I think.
I agree that it is well optimized, and I agree that they have created a certain, like an impressive volume of professional looking assets. I do not agree that this game plays well or is designed well. I think the shooting to me feels like Battlefield Heroes. It just feels like lame third person, no juice. It just feels incredibly generic and like boring to me personally. But yeah, I mean, I won't argue that it's not like optimized well. And
it feels MMO-y to me. It feels like the type of shit you get in games like Ark, and you know what I mean? Like, it's like the boss fights are particularly, I would say, badly designed.
Yes.
They're just like, it's easy to cheese them. The AI is not very good. But like all the design of the game allows you to have these dopey little pals, because they're just like dopey little, they're just like, you know what I mean? Like,
is that just a diegetic like excuse though for bad AI? Because I felt like the AI a lot of the time in combat was not being reactive at all or doing anything. I felt like a lot of them were just standing there while I shot them. And then the boss fights to me feel like they're like, if you're creating a game where you're invited to explore this big world, as many survival crafting games do, the con game they have to pull on you is, here's this big world. It's hard to explore because of these frictional factors. Like, you need to eat, you need to stay warm, you need to have clothes, you need to build bases, et cetera, et cetera. That player friction is justified because the player wants to explore the world. So in Valheim, like, that game works on my brain until I have exhausted the things that I'm interested in seeing, right? And it feels to me like in Palworld, the things that are worth seeing are like, there's, I mean, again, early access game.
That's the subjectivity, though.
Yeah, it is very subjective. I'm speaking purely. This is everything I'm saying is very subjective right now, just to be clear. But like, it feels to me like the boss towers are kind of the thing that you will find through exploring in Palworld, the thing that justifies the exploration, the thing that like justifies all the frictional elements, the thing that you're building.
And the fast
towards.
travel stuff, but yeah.
And and unlocking like new tech and fast travel and stuff. But it feels to me like each one of those carrots on the stick, none of them feel particularly interesting or clever or original to me. And so the whole thing crumbles under the weight of that, because it's like, well, what, like, you can't just give me a bunch of drudgery and then be like, oh, don't you want to alleviate your drudgery? I know this is also getting into like survival crafting as a genre as well, and I recognize that. But yeah.
No, I find the world much less interesting than something like Valheim was like the amount of times I went, whoa, there, as opposed to this, where I'm like, I've never felt whoa. It's been more like that's a fucked up looking fake Pokemon. I want to get that guy. What the fuck? Why is this penguin wearing like a sort of a early presidential, wig type thing? So I think I'm playing it in the sort of way that like Frank plays a lot of his 90s dirtbag games, right? Where it's like, I know this is bad for me, but I'm loving it. Like that's
That's
where
totally
my
fair.
brain goes.
Yeah, I would never shame anyone for enjoying this game, obviously.
Frank, sorry, we rambled the entire time. It's been 30 minutes of this podcast and barely talked to you. What have you made of Palworld? I know you've played a little bit of it as well. Are you vibing with it? Are you a Pokemon kid?
So I liked Gen 1 Pokemon, and I guess even Gen 2. I have not kept up with it. Like, I don't like playing the Switch. It's old. The graphics are never good. There's no achievements. I don't care. The fact that there is a janky Pokemon that I can play on my Xbox and get achievements is very funny to me. But yeah, this is like a lot of the games I do like. I like janky ass Japanese games. I love Musou games, which are not impressive. They are mindless, and sometimes it's very fun to play a game that's mindless. That said, I have no stake in this game. I don't think I'll beat it. I don't think I'll play much of it, but there is a satisfaction. Like you said with MMO, a lot of the thing feels like playing Final Fantasy 14 in like the base version of it. You have hunting logs, and it's really like kill 10 of these monsters. Great, big XP bonus. Kill 10 of these, and that's probably where they got the idea for the XP bonus.
Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah. If you collect 10, you get or 5. Yeah.
And like, I do love how this game is so harmless and came out of nowhere, and is just like the topic of the week. Are like, and I think Danny said in the quick look, like, there's a good chance everyone will have forgotten about this a month from now, and then we will move on to the next thing. But it's so like funny how it's just like everyone not up in arms, but it's like it's exciting that the most benign, or maybe it's not benign because maybe like, where we're going to see 6,000 more knockoff games get huge. To me, it's like no different from the world of film. Like, Bruce Lee films kicked ass, and then Bruce Lee died, and then a million like Hong Kong studios made Bruce exploitation films. This is a Pokemon exploitation game, but there hasn't been enough. There hasn't been enough of that. Like, yes, let every studio make a Pokemon game. Why has there not been millions more? Who cares? Like, like I don't know. It's just very funny. It's crazy that it did blow up. I think a big part of the reason this did blow up is like, Pokemon games are locked in Nintendo Switch. Here's the thing that's on PC, Steam Deck, Xbox, whatever. It's $30. It's cheaper. People can play it even for a day, have fun, and then move on. It's very funny. But yeah, I think the fact that it is so spectacularly unoriginal is what makes this so funny. It's such a novelty. And I think Palworld will become like a shorthand. It's like, oh, that's like a Palworld game. Like, but also Fortnite has been doing this for 4 or 3 years now too. But like, every season, Fortnite just takes the latest thing, and it's so funny. Like,
took the Among Us mode. Remember they put that in? Like that was like, ooh.
And like the month Splatoon came out, their season was like, oh, you can turn into goo and slide around and cover the stage with goo, and it's just like,
also just like Fortnite.
Yeah.
Like vanilla like not the original version was just PUBG. They just they did a battle royale and then
So I do like that. I don't know. I always find it fascinating when people are just iterating on other things. I would love to see Nintendo again. They're always going to do their own thing, but I would love for Nintendo just to, I don't know. Yeah, go smash Breath of the Wild and Pokemon, make the official thing. Cool. Or I'm sure they're already working on something official, but I don't know. The thing that sold me on this game originally was Pokemon with guns. I remember seeing like a trailer or a screenshot months ago. I don't even know if it was part of it might have been part of like an Xbox Direct or something.
Right.
I was disappointed that you do not get guns early on. You can get a bow and arrow. But yeah, I also like it is, like well said, it's like it is very much like a Newgrounds Flash cartoon. And again, I grew up, I loved, like I still will go back and laugh at horrible Newgrounds cartoons because it's just so like, I don't know. I there's something that will forever tickle my brain of just that juvenile 12-year-old. Like, I mean, South Park. It's that same thing. It's in South Park.
It's Chin Pokemon.
It's
totally. They made the Chin Pokemon game. We're all out there hunting for Shoe.
Yeah, and I think like part of it's so big is like I'm sure, I don't know. Again, Pokemon probably is still universally popular, but I don't know many adults who, I don't know. I feel like people still dive into it, but I don't know. I'm not friends with that many people who care that much about Pokemon and will still play it. So this just seems like a quick thing of like, oh yeah, I remember Pokemon. Let's play it, and then it does.
I don't know. Pokemon Go was really big though. Remember that?
Oh, yeah.
That was especially with younger folks. I think you put it really well. Like that point as well about like a lot of the like I don't know if this has any staying power. This feels like very like I feel like I'm watching or playing an oddity. Like this is just a very strange little game that I'll put a bunch of. I mean, I played like 12 hours in 3 days, which for me is for one game is like quite a lot. You know what I mean? Like that's I could not put this thing down. I was just like, this is so funny. But it was coming from that place of like, it's just so weird. I've never seen. We don't get these types of reactive games all that often because games take years to make, right?
Yeah.
And I do think like a lot of the anger that's coming out, and like if they were stealing models and stuff, to be honest, I would be bamboozled if they were, because obviously this game was going to have a lot of people looking at stuff like that because it's clearly so fucking derivative that like. The one thing you'd think they'd make sure was that they didn't steal anything directly because they're clearly stealing stuff indirectly. Mm-hmm. So if they are doing that stuff, then obviously that's terrible. But there does seem to be a lot of anger coming from, I think, certain Pokemon fans who feel like their thing has been sort of, taken away from them or that type of thing, or that it's been, I don't know, shamed or something. But I will say this. Pokemon fans have been looking for this type of game for a lot, not necessarily an arc game, but like a big, I don't know, expansive world, like the one that came out on Switch. What's it called again? Pokemon Legends
or whatever?
RTS or whatever. Yeah, like I played a bunch of that as well, and they tried, but everything always comes down to it's the same fucking format of like, go to the gym, get the thing, go to the blah, get the blah. And I think like when Breath of the Wild came out, I could be off base. I think when Breath of the Wild came out, and like that was Nintendo finally throwing a bunch of money and a bunch of design and a lot of time at the Zelda IP and making the Zelda game that people have wanted, throwing money at it. I think when you look at those Pokemon games, and Pokemon, I'm guessing Pokemon is a multi-billion-dollar company. Like if they fucking weren't before Pokemon Go, I'm sure they are now. And all the games they put out still feel cheap. They don't feel like games that have had big budgets thrown at them and are trying to make a big statement. They feel like games that are put out to sort of appease them, at least the 3D ones. I think the when they do their sort of like regular ass ones, although I'm not even sure if they do those anymore, they sort of tickle the itch. And there's been some fantastic Pokemon games over the years, you know what I mean? Like Lightning and Black and White and, mentioned Red and all that sort of stuff. But I feel like in a way, like they've been sitting on that IP and not really doing right by it, or in a thing. And I think Breath of the Wild sort of, at least in my eyes and maybe in other people's eyes, really highlighted that. And in a way, this feels like a reaction to a massive gaping hole in the market as well. It's not like somebody's making their version of a popular game. They're sort of making a version of a popular game that has existed in the mind of the zeitgeist, but actually hasn't existed. You know what I mean?
Yeah. One of the notes I took when I was playing this game is, I have too many. I have like 2 pages of notes here. It was something like, this game feels to me like a high school kid was like, I'm going to make Pokemon, but better. And like they actually had the competency and technical skill to actually do that. But that is what it feels like to me, is like drawing in the margins of your history book. And you're like, it's going to have guns. And then the Pokemon are going to make the guns. And then you're going to fight the Pokemon with the guns.
Totally. And then you can capture the people. And then, they played Zelda that weekend and we're like, we'll do climbing.
We'll do climbing with stamina. You'll get cold.
We'll do towers.
Yep.
We'll do fast travel things that they're not shrines, but like, they kind of look similar.
The one thing I do want to say is this is a very productive discussion for me, because it's like to hear 2 people whose opinions I really respect talk positively about a game that I dislike so much. I think it's like it's a good exercise in like mind expansion. Like you know what I mean? Like
I don't disagree with editing yours. To me it feels like we both listened to the same band,
and you liked it and I didn't. Yeah,
I liked it and you didn't. Totally, but I agree with everything you're saying.
Yeah, we went to the Fish concert and I was like, it just sounds like they're going like, and you're like, yeah, that's why it rules, dude.
Why did you say I was the Fish fan?
Because I didn't want to be. It feels a little bit to me like this game is like when I look at the environments, not only do I see Breath of the Wild and the little sounds and the Sheikah Slate.
Oh my
god,
it's ridiculous.
It's absurd, but it feels to me a little bit like this game is also ripping off Genshin. Like the fast travel things look like the Genshin things.
Oh,
and
okay. I've not played enough Genshin. I
haven't played a ton of it. I have a friend who's really into it, and I've watched him play a bit of it. It feels like because this game is so popular, is the only reason I'm saying this. It feels like games, art, media are kind of like a gene pool, and because this game to me feels like it's derivative of a derivative of a derivative of a derivative. Derivatives are fine. Stardew Valley is derivative of Harvest Moon, and Stardew Valley is a really good game. It's also like has Skinner boxy elements. I just think it performs them more elegantly by wrapping them in like diegetic relationships to people and places and themes.
It feels thoughtful in a way that this
exactly
kind of
there's like soul.
This feels very this feels very superficial.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like there's one layer of depth on everything.
Yeah.
There's no story in this fucking world.
That's the thing is like there's no pretense of like there's no experience in my mind where I'm like, oh, I'm a Viking. Oh, I'm like surviving in a dinosaur world. Oh, I'm like a scrappy post-apocalyptic survivor fighting. There's just no like there's no larger experience that it's trying to curate. It's just trying to like distract and like time suck a little bit. And
I feel like my experience of playing this game is, I'm playing a video game.
Yeah, it's very like maybe it's like Brechtian or something. Maybe I'm not giving it enough credit. It's like reminding you that you're playing a game. But it feels to me when like game design elements are derivatives of derivatives of derivatives, and there's no it's like think about genetics where like the process is two different things coming together and creating a new thing, and that like that's how genetics works and that's how traits are passed on. And if you have two people that are in the same family and they inbreed, then you end up with like the Habsburg protruding lips and jaw, and the legacy dies. And this to me feels like a Habsburg game. It feels like
Habsburg ruled most of Europe for centuries.
I know, but then they looked like insane by the end. I just think it is important to, if you're gonna, derivative is not it's not a dirty word. So many of the greatest Doki Doki became Mario. Like a million things are derivative. And
Snacks, Ooblets, like no one's looking at those games and saying, "Oh, you're ripping off."
No, you take inspiration.
X or Y.
You like it's okay to take inspiration and wear it on your sleeves. But I think
and we like that in games because we don't like people are like fans of that and they're not fans of like patents for shit, for gameplay. But sorry,
the only caveat on that is that I think taking inspiration, being derivative, totally fine. I just think the only other step that's missing in Palworld is that you have to take the football and you have to run with it. You have to try to you can't just like take other elements that people like and cobble them together and not really try to do anything new. And to me, it feels like Palworld is kind of just doing like a worse version of a bunch of different things, but all in a package where those things have not been together, and that's why people like it.
Right.
And the fact that it is popular, I don't think is a counter argument against this, because there are a lot of games that are like mobile games are bigger than PC games. It doesn't mean that mobile games are better designed than PC games. So I just think that like it's important to try. You got to try something, do something.
Yeah. So here, and this is the thing that like I always worry about having the sort of like old man mentality to some of this stuff, where I'm like, oh, this is the first horseman of the apocalypse, right? Like there's nothing but bad shit's going to follow this. We are entering dangerous times if the publishers and VCs realize that you can just fucking just stick a bunch of genres together and call it a day, or make something that's like legally distinct from another popular IP. I mean, when I go back in history and I look at like, oh, that's always happened in games, and those games just don't take off. Like how many fucking Call of Duty ripoffs, how many Tomb Raider ripoffs. Frank, you were talking about something else earlier that was ripped off a bunch. Like there was maybe I am going old, I can't remember something Frank said 15 minutes ago. Walking simulator, like lots of this stuff happens. What seems weird about this game is that this is the one that was took off and is fun to play or something like that. I don't necessarily think it's going to like create this. If anything, I think maybe this speaks to a sort of a wider issue within AAA games, which I've been banging on this drum for a few years, which is I think we are just like completely like fucked when it comes to interesting new ideas in AAA. Like I think games are coasting really hard when it comes to big AAA games or even AA or whatever. I think most of them, you see it every year when we do Game of the Year. Most of the games we're interested in are these really well produced indie games. Not the indie games of the Xbox 360 era, which are also really cool, but like we're very bare bones, and you can tell we're made by a budget. Like now indie studios are able to put together games that are really impressive looking and play really well and do interesting things. And I just think that so much of games has become sequels, and there's fewer games in some way at that strata, and we're just not seeing anything evolving or interesting, like in a way that we were so fucking blessed growing up from between the 90s and the 2010s or whatever, in all that period where there was just so much going on. And now they're definitely, especially with the whole tech stuff as well, it feels like very race to the bottom when it comes to like that's even, you could apply the same thing. I don't know this, and this is where I worry about being the old man, but the internet's shit now. Internet used to be cool. Internet, or at the very least the internet's plateaued. There ain't nothing's interesting happening. You don't go on and go like, oh, check out this cool new website or check out this cool new technology. It's all stuff that is meant to try and exploit either workers or get you to spend money on something. And it's just bullshit. And I feel like games, are in a weird place with that, where there's just not that many interesting ideas. And weirdly, this is like not a canary in a coal mine, but like it's a game that like doesn't really have any interesting ideas. But the fact that it is like an amalgamation of these three other interesting ideas in this like very obvious sort of not plagiarized, but like just like riffing off some popular things. It's such a weird oddity. It's almost like the fucking zenith of the whole thing.
Yeah,
it's like this is where we're going.
Is this where the wave breaks? Is like maybe
right,
Palworld
exactly.
is where everyone realizes that we need something to change, and maybe Palworld is the savior we need.
Exactly. Yeah, it's showing us the errors of our ways. I don't know, or we're just so bored of games that like when something like this comes along, that it takes all of our attention, because we're just like, well, at least it's not just some fucking live services bullshit. At least it's not some other, sequel of a sequel with none of the original people who worked on it, and super like this game is derivative in lots of ways, but like, if think of like your favorite game that came out 20 years ago and then a sequel that's coming out today, and how derivative they are.
True.
And how stuck they are.
Yeah, just because you're
like,
ripping off someone else it's not like it doesn't absolve you if you're ripping off yourself or something. Like
yourself, exactly. Yeah. So I don't know. It's fucking weird. I do wonder. I think a lot of this will be answered by, are we talking about this game in a month's time? And I don't know. I don't think we will be.
Yeah, the last kind of thing I want to say about this game is that I think, not that this is the measure of a good game, but there is no world in which in 5 years people are looking up at their bookshelf and they're like, oh, there's my Cativa statue. There's Hocrates is up there on my little, you know what I mean? Like no one's getting the Nendoroid statuette. I mean, I'll be eating my words, maybe. Man. Someone's going to send me this clip in 5 years and be like, shut up, old man.
If they sold a book, like an art book of all of the pals, I would buy it in a fucking blink of an eye. But and maybe this speaks to why I am enjoying this game so much. Outside of the fact that I'm just like mechanically, I'm really enjoying the process of playing it. Outside of that, it's just so fucking funny. It's like an anti-IP. It's like I don't think it's. I'm not giving it like, I don't think they're going for some sort of like Banksy-esque subversion on IP. That's not what they're doing. This is like exit, but it's tickling the same part of my brain as Exit Through the Gift Shop. Have you seen the documentary about what's his name again?
Mr. Brainwash.
This is the Mr. Brainwash of video games,
really
isn't
is.
it? This is the Mr. Brainwash, but I feel like I'm in on it. I feel like I'm like, oh, this is fucking so Mr. Brainwash, but fucking I would go to the Mr. Brainwash gallery and not buy anything. That's what I feel like I'm doing.
Yeah.
But maybe I'm one of the idiots.
It's like maybe unintentional Mr. Brainwash. It's like Mr. Bean Mr. Brainwash. It's Mr. Beanwash. It's like
Mr. Bean.
They stumbled into being Mr. Brainwash by making something that was so derivative. Because if this game was being like fuck Pokemon and they were like if they were constantly evoking this kind of like weird punk rock, like anti-corporate IP, anti-capitalist. Like I don't think it's that smart. I know that they've got like the assembly lines and it's like, oh, it's the Pokemon are like your slaves, and that's like subversive, I guess. I just don't. If they took that to a place where it was legitimately subversive, my opinion on this game would feel very different.
Yes. And in a way, I feel like this game, even the name, Palworld, is just unbelievably generic.
Yeah.
Like, it's almost a shock no one has called anything that before. It's just so bland. But I do feel like, when you create a game with, when you create art that has an identity, the more of an identity it has, almost it feels like sometimes the more walls you're putting up, right? The more reasons you're putting up for somebody to not engage with that piece of art, because it's like, oh, I don't like that, or I don't like this. Whereas this feels like they've created the most like porous, like there's no wall, there's no membrane. It's just fucking come on in. You know what I mean?
It's like a restaurant called Food
Palworld.
for People or something.
Exactly. It's the fucking Soylent Green.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, come on in, man. You like Pokemon? You like Arc games? We're basically that. Hey, Breath of the Wild, you like that? We're basically that. We don't have any opinions on anything. Just come in and do a thing, you know? Spend some time with the pals. It's only $30. Everyone's playing it. I don't know. It's very weird. In a way, I feel like it sucks maybe in some ways for the developers to be getting so much shit because their game took off. Like if this game sold like 100,000 copies, we probably wouldn't be talking about it. So, and obviously all the death threats and all that stuff isn't cool, but it does show you how when a game is successful, it does change the tenor on it. And even this fast, even a studio you mightn't have ever heard of and a game you never watched a trailer for, the minute something's successful, we do tend to analyze it more, and probably rightfully, because it's having more of an artistic impact on the world, right? It's in our faces whether we like it or not. You cannot escape Palworld right now.
We're all in Palworld.
Much like Gary Jules's cover of Mad World back in 2002 or whatever that was.
I find it kind of funny. I find it kind of sad.
Sad. The dreams in which my pals die are the best. Dreams in which I shoot a pal in the face with a machine gun and they die immediately and they roll around on the ground are the best I've ever had.
Amen.
Any final thoughts on Palworld, gents?
I will say it's always great when a game comes out and explodes with like zero hype building up to it. I think that's another thing that's so, like there's games that have been teased and like for years seen trailers of at E3 or whatever, showcases, and it comes out and people are disappointed. Here's a game that no one cared about. People are enjoying because they don't like, again, the whole fact that there's no one's invested in this. And it's like, oh, let's try it. Oh, this is great. And people can put it down at any moment. Other thing, like Breath of the Wild does this too. But again, I always appreciate a game where I tried playing the Avatar game. The first hour is you're in Avatar school and like you don't get a bow and arrow until like hour 2 and it drives me crazy. Just let me just go do stuff. Like I hate. So I love that.
I want to jig Sully so bad right now.
I hate every game that starts with an hour-long cutscene tutorial. You're on rails. Here, it's just go. And so that
is already Sheikah Slate.
Yeah.
So give me my Sheikah Slate and let me go hep when I jump. You know what I mean?
And I do think this is I'm not a sequel to Genshin Impact, but kind of a sequel to the phenomenon of Genshin Impact. Because again, Genshin Impact was just straight up Breath of the Wild with hack and slash and then cute generic anime girls. Like again, enough of the right formula. And so like this is the same thing as Genshin Impact. But again, ultimately, if it's like it makes people happy, I bet there's like lots of kids too just playing Palworld and have maybe not touched Pokemon. I don't know, or maybe they have, but now everyone gets a new Pokemon game for free or for $30 or Game Pass, whatever. I don't know, more games, more mindless distractions. And again, you get achievement points. That's what we're all about.
There you go. That's what it's all about. Get those Chivos. Yeah, I do like some of the most games I've enjoyed the most over the years are the ones that had come out of nowhere. I feel like Jeremy does this every week when you've played some like indie game that you sort of like jumped into and didn't know what it was. Definitely Homebody was one for sure last year. Valheim, of course, I had no idea how deep that rabbit hole went and it kept presenting really cool things. Immortality was another one. Outer Wilds, definitely. That was I didn't know nothing about that. Literally zero. So everything in that game blew me the fuck away. So yeah, maybe that's just it. Maybe it's just novelty. We'll have to see whether we talk about Palworld ever again on this podcast. You'll be the first to hear it. A couple more games we've played here. I'm going to talk about The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered in a hot second. But Frank, you've been playing the game I've been hoping Jeremy will play for the past couple of years. You've been enjoying Boston's own Fallout 4.
Yeah, it's so funny. Like I what did I do? Oh yeah, I platinumed Yakuza like a Gaiden, and so I'm waiting for.
Oh, you're prepped for Infinite Wealth.
I'm waiting for Infinite Wealth, so I just needed something I could just chill with. And it's so funny playing Fallout 4 after we all like rinse New Vegas, because what I like about Fallout 4 is it's very easy. It's very easy in a way where like New Vegas is incredible, ingenious. But like every mission in New Vegas is like, oh, there's skill checks or like, like what do you want to do here? Fallout 4, it's you shoot the thing, mission complete, move on. And it's kind of like, wait, what the hell? But what's nice is, like, again, I'm very stressed. There's so much going on in my life that's overwhelming.
Right.
Fallout 4 is so smooth to play. It's like skiing down a bunny slope, and it's like, oh, that's exactly what my brain needs. It's so easy. It's so satisfying. I don't know if I'm going to commit and beat it, or maybe it's a game I pick up every now and then. But yeah,
Is it your first time playing it?
so no, I was gonna say I brought this up on the podcast like 6 months ago or a year ago. Like I started it. I was like, this is good, and I got busy. So maybe Fallout 4 is just that game is that like that rebound game every now and then where it's like I just need
Right.
something quick to pick up and not commit and whatever. But I don't know. I'm
I
enjoying.
love that world.
Yeah.
I think the world is. I think Boston's amazing. Like Diamond City and all that stuff is so cool. All the MIT stuff, like it feels. You can tell like this was like Emil Pagliarello being from Boston was like, oh, he got all the Boston shit. Well, I don't know. I don't know much about Boston, but it feels more of the city than like DC did in Fallout 3.
No,
that's it.
The setting is great. I will also say it is kind of refreshing to play after bouncing off of Starfield. Again, the main thing we talked about. It's like, yeah, you pick a mission, you walk for however many miles, and along the way you end up doing 3 or 4 different missions. And it's like, oh, that discoverability or you find weapons, or just it's fun just shooting ghouls and zombies and mutants and freaks or raiders. And it's like
The shooting in 4 is the first
Yeah.
time they nailed shooting.
It's awesome.
It's very good.
And so yeah, it's solid. And I think the ultimate thing is I have a few friends who are super into Fallout 76, and they've been trying hard to get me to play. But I want to play Fallout 4 before I touch 76. So at some point I will dive into 76 and try it, because I think they also just put out an update like within the last year. I never touched 76, but I'm kind of curious.
And 76 plays more like Fallout
Yeah.
4 than any of the other games, for sure. Like, it's very Fallout 4-y. It's got a great world. I mean, that's clearly something that matters a lot to me when I talk about games is the exploring the world is a really big one for me. And I really love the world in 76 a lot. I think it might be one of the best maps, maybe the best map, just by virtue of the fact that it has to have a lot of shit in it. That there's a lot going on in 76's map. I think it's really, really impressive. Cool. Fallout 4, available now. I played some of The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered. So this came out, unfortunately, much like what was it? Vampire the Masquerade Redemption came out the same day as Half-Life 2, I think. The Last of Us Part 2, unfortunately, came out the same day as Palworld, so nobody gave a flying shit about it.
It's really fun.
I'm not even joking. Like, no one's been talking. Like, oh, it's been Palworld for a fucking week. But anyway, I picked it up, and it was $10 because I already owned it on PS4, so that was cool to see. So it was a $10 upgrade to get this version. Obviously, we've talked a little bit about this. It's sort of an oddity in a way that it's a remaster of a game that came out pretty recently and looks really good. And like, I should maybe watch a Digital Foundry video and see a side by side, but I mean, it's running really well. It's running at 60 frames a second on the PS5 and XYZ, but I think a large part of the reason you play those games is not, I mean, they look really good, but like it's every other part of it, and largely the rest of it is unchanged. They've added a bunch of stuff. The things that I have enjoyed the most are they have director commentary on it, and they also have some deleted levels, some lost levels. And I wanted to talk about this because this is kind of within the Noclip sort of remit a little bit. And they're also putting out the documentary. They're putting out the second Grounded documentary in, I think it's not finished yet. Like, they have a trailer they put out on YouTube, and you can watch it in the game, and then they're patching it into the game, I think, at some stage once it's finished. This is Area 5 worked on it, who did the original Grounded documentary, the making of The Last of Us Part what was then just The Last of Us. Now this is about The Last of Us Part 2. It's a bunch of footage that they filmed apparently, and then COVID happened, and then they sort of went back and put together this documentary. So that's getting patched in. I'm not sure if it's also coming on YouTube as well. Hopefully it is, but I know for sure it's getting patched into the game at some stage. But one thing I wanted to mention was in the trailers for this game, we were talking about the fact that they were putting in director commentary, and we saw the little like sort of Valvian like speech bubbles, right, that you kind of go up to and interact with. So as far as I know, and I've maybe played the first 90 minutes of the game again and done all the lost levels, those little bits are only in the lost levels. The director commentary is only during the cutscenes in the game.
Oh, all right.
So which is a little bit disappointing on my end because I thought we were going to get lots of these bubbles all over the world. Maybe you do. Maybe I've just not gotten to a section, but like I've gotten all the way up to almost the sort of inciting event of that game, which happens about 2 hours in. So I've done a lot of gameplay, and I haven't seen any of the bubbles yet, but all of the cutscenes have like Neil Druckmann, Ashley Johnson, Troy Baker, a bunch of them, some of the other folks I think involved in writing and stuff, involved in that, and the commentary's been really good. I've actually really enjoyed that commentary. And then the Lost Levels stuff, you can complete there's 3 levels. Those levels have the little speech bubbles, so you can go up and it's very like you tap on it and it's like, oh, it's the level designer for this one, and they're talking about where they placed this tunnel or where they did this and why they cut this level. These are all levels that didn't make the final game, and then they're in various stages of development, but they're all like relatively well finished, I would say, and they're playable. Like they're very like one of them is a party that got an entire scene that got cut where there's a mini game where you play with a bunch of kids pretending to be what are the ones with the can't see?
Clicker?
I forget what they're called. Clickers, yeah. Where like there's a little kid, like they've clearly just, for the sake of this level, just imported the clicker animation onto a small body, and it's very fucked up because it's just like it's a little kid doing like blah, 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 blah. And they're basically playing a version of tag, but it's with the clicker, and they have to close their eyes and listen. And then you do it, and then you become the clicker, and the game goes dark, and you have to use like the sense, the sound sense thing when you hold R1 to like grab a kid. It's really cool.
That's awesome.
It shows you how far along they get when, and then they have to take it out because of like pacing or the script or whatever, and that type of thing. So those, I've really enjoyed those. I'd say you could play all 3 of those Lost Levels in like definitely under an hour, like maybe 40 minutes. I can't remember, but they all felt like, 10, 15 minutes each maybe. And then, yeah, the director commentary. The one warning I will say is the director commentary, you need to complete the game for it to unlock, which I kind of hate that they do that. Like, it seems like the type of thing that's largely unnecessary. Like, you can put up a big spoiler that's like, yo, we're going to be talking about, almost immediately they talk about huge spoilers in the director commentary, which is like, sure. But the fact that you have to have completed a 15-hour, God, maybe longer, that game felt really long, game to do it. So I panicked because I had imported some save games, but none of them were the ones where they were all like mid-game because we'd gone back and recorded a bunch, I think, we only did The Last of Us Part 1 in that one, didn't we? I forget. But I think I played through the game halfway through again. But I eventually found a save game that I imported from the cloud that was one that had the game previously finished on it. So it unlocked everything then. But I was panicking for a second where I was like, oh no, did I just spend money on this and I can't access the thing? So I don't know. Maybe I'm worried about a use case that doesn't exist. But like if you didn't have your cloud saves and you lost your PlayStation or something, maybe you would have to play through the entire game before you could do the director commentary. That seems a bit arbitrary. I don't understand why they did that, but I'm sure they had their reasons. But yeah, I've enjoyed it. I'm a little bit disappointed that those little bubbles aren't in the rest of the game. Maybe they are later. I don't think they are because I've played, like I said, maybe 2 hours at this stage. But the commentary itself during the cutscenes is very good. So I'm basically playing on like the easiest difficulty so I can just get to the next cutscene and listen to the director commentary. So yeah, it's very interesting. Yeah. The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered. I'm getting a lot of insight into like, there's also been a lot of like talk recently, I think, especially with what's happening in Palestine with regard to the politics of that game. I know like that's fairly well trodden. There was a great, was a Motherboard or Vice somebody wrote, I think it was Emmanuel Mailberg wrote a great article about it years ago. I think he might have grown up in Israel as well. I think Neil Druckmann grew up in the West Bank and then moved to the US at some stage. And there's obviously that's a very big, complex thing. And I'm not going to speak for anyone here, but I think a lot of the conversation in the first couple of hours has been about themes that are obviously directly connected to his experiences. And like, he's not talking about growing up in Israel or anything like that, but in previous, like there's quotes of Druckmann talking about how, like, obviously, especially when it came to the Seattle part of Last of Us Part 2, a lot of that game is about, thematically about what he sort of felt growing up and the sort of cycle of violence and all that sort of stuff. As somebody who's like, probably not politically aligned with him on some of that sort of stuff, having grown up in Ireland and being surrounded by the Palestinian solidarity movement and all that sort of stuff, I found it very interesting them all talking about the characters and their motivations and what they're thinking. Because sometimes the actors and Druckmann and the writers are coming at it from different perspectives. So I've actually like really enjoyed listening to all of that to try and get an idea of like from what source he's writing from and from what direction the actors are interpreting it. Because there's even a part at the start where the opening scene where Joel is playing on a guitar and having a conversation with his brother, immediately Troy Baker is like, I fought really hard to not do this scene. And him and Neil Druckmann are talking about it, like why, and like then he saw the motivation of why it should happen and all this sort of stuff. So it's good. So like I feel like the director commentary is really interesting because they're just like very candidly speaking about what they thought or didn't think or that type of thing. So yeah, I'm 2 hours into it and I'm going to keep going. I think I'm learning a lot about the motivations and the perspectives. I think perspectives is probably what I'd say more than anything. The perspectives of everyone involved and sort of what they were bringing to the table, and ultimately how, like, you know, the game is made from a melange, or at least the story part of the game is made from that sort of creative space between all of those people. And that's kind of how we end up with the characters we get and the story we get. Obviously, the game itself is made by hundreds of talented people all around the world. Not one person, not 5 people. But, you know, for director commentary's sake, it's probably hard to get all of those people involved. Something we can probably speak to from the documentary side as well. So yeah, Last of Us Part 2 Remastered. Do you guys have any questions? Are you going to have a go on that at all?
Have you touched the roguelike mode? Or like that's the one thing and that sounds really interesting.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, I need to give it a go. I wanted to check out the director commentary was definitely the sort of stuff I was most interested in. How does it work again? It's like it's like random levels. They say don't play it until you've completed the game because it's going to show like random levels, random enemies, and it's some sort of roguelike thing. Yeah, that's in there as well, which seems a little bit incongruous to the themes of the game, like the cycle of violence,
endless warfare,
playing a roguelike, endless violence. But you know, whatever. Video games, they're all this fucking video game. I don't know. That's a whole other conversation about artistic intent that I feel like, having talked about Palworld for an hour, maybe our brains are not really able to go there. But there it is. Yeah, sorry. Palworld also did produce a roadmap. Sorry, I see it here on the...
I thought you were going to say a roguelike.
A roguelike? Yeah, they're going to do roguelikes next. They're just going to do everything. They're going to do a Hades version. They're going to take all the characters from Hades and put them in Palworld.
It's going to be like a different country's mythology.
What if at the end of Palworld you like go into the clouds and it's the gods, and then you've got like, hey, look, fucking Supergiant don't own the fucking Greek gods, right?
True.
The pantheon, that ain't theirs. How derivative? Greg Kasavin.
Palworld is really the Roman religion to Pokemon's Greek religion. You know what I'm saying?
You're right. Exactly. The fucking Romans were so derivative.
Yeah, Mars. What the hell is that? Give me
on,
Ares,
man.
Baby.
I know. You just changed some letters around. You basically kept most of the structure of the family. You just added in a couple of freaks. Jesus. At least the Christians decided to like do saints. You know what I mean? None of this shit. Planned future updates for Palworld include PvP raid bosses, Pal Arena, Steam Xbox crossplay, various Xbox feature improvements, server transfers and migrations, improvements to the building system. Yeah, the building's not great. New islands, pals, bosses, and technologies. There you go. More pals. That'll come in the Palworld's Part 2 Remastered.
One great unique feature of the Xbox version is you can't name your character. They just like forgot to include that in the Xbox version. So I have 2 characters. One is player 717 and the other is like player 913.
Wow.
Oh, cool.
So when they say various Xbox feature improvements, hopefully that means you'll be allowed to edit your character. Your character also T-poses anytime you load into the map on Xbox.
Oh, great.
So
great.
Again, I do, again, those are features that makes me like it even more.
That's amazing. I called my level Pal Springs. I went for that. I was pretty happy with that. And I had my old World of Warcraft character was called Fugani, so I called my character in this one Fugazi, which felt nicely.
This has been stuck in my head since you were talking about The Last of Us, so I have to get it off my chest and out of my brain.
Do it. Do it.
There has to be someone out there who called their Pal Island Palestine, right?
Dude,
oh, yeah.
There was a fucking... It happened in the quick look. There's like a I don't know what you call them. especially because we're mentioning, I'm not going to say the fucking wrong word here. There's an armed group of people in the game called the PAL something. And literally the first time I came across them, I was like, what? Because they're wearing like green and white as well. And I was like, what the fuck?
Oh my God.
Like, this is the political statement. No, sorry. No, it's just they're like PAL somethings. I don't know what
See,
it was.
Palworld developers,
like,
this is your chance to make a statement in your weird
this is it.
Pokemon
This is their
game.
fucking, like the Taiwanese putting the fucking, the Winnie the Pooh.
Oh yeah,
in
detention or whatever it was, or devotion.
This is where you make your political statement. I cannot think of a game that is less likely to say anything political than Palworld. It's, especially, I mean, Pokemon's cockfighting, but at least in this one, you're able to capture and sell humans. So,
evening the playing field, you know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. They're going where the Pokemon company is too scared to. Let's jump into the emails. We got one here,
yes.
Frank, before we call it a PAL day.
Yeah, this is from Blurbs, and if you have an email, send it at podcast@noclip.video or write to us in our Discord. Blurbs wrote, "Hey guys, I have a classic case of making up a question so I can tell a story. Have you ever randomly run into anyone you recognized or knew personally while playing a multiplayer game? While playing Sea of Thieves one day, I was playing with a guy who had the shittiest microphone I'd ever heard. After playing for a while, he told me to Google his username. I was streaming at the time, so I had gamer tags turned off, and once I flipped them on, I saw his name was Duval Magic. I instantly recognized it and said, wait, is that Randy Pitchford? Sure as shit, it was actually him. I asked him to DM me on Twitter as proof, and he instead tweeted out my stream. This is around the Medieval Times fiasco, so it was a bit awkward, but to be honest, he was super polite and chill during our play session. Sorry for the long story. Would love to hear if y'all have any random encounters like that. Also, Randy, you can definitely afford to buy a new mic."
Oh my God. So Randy Pitchford told him to Google my username.
Yeah.
That's so funny.
That is no swag, Randy Pitchford. Oh my God. So that was around the Medieval Times USB debacle, I guess. That was a while back. It was like, God, 6 or 7 years ago now, probably. Is it? No, it was after Noclip, so it was like.
What happened? He left a USB. I don't know the story.
Yeah, he left a USB in a Medieval Times that, what was on it? Was it like secrets or porn or something?
Secret porn.
I forget. Allegedly. I'm just going to say allegedly a lot here. Allegedly. I forget. It was right after we interviewed him for the Half-Life retrospective. I drove up to Gearbox that day. Had lunch with Mikey Newman. It was very nice. And then got my car stuck in a car park that was apparently a residential car park that I didn't know about. And I had to drive 3 or 4 hours back to Austin from northern Dallas, from Chico, is it? Texas, I think. Great ride. Shout out to Buc-ee's, the big gas station that's on the way. It's basically the only thing. That, and there's some Polish food place on the way, which is pretty good. Did you Google it?
I did. Yeah.
I was padding there.
I can read the headline. Amidst legal battle, this is from Ars Technica. Amidst legal battle, Gearbox CEO says he left USB stick of porn at Medieval Times.
There you go.
That's such a good sentence.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah.
I love the idea of transporting porn
to Medieval Times.
Universal serial
to physical
bus.
media. Yeah, I just love the idea of
Medieval
not
Times.
only having a USB stick of porn, but having it on you, keeping that thing on you at Medieval Times of all places.
Yeah, maybe he was watching it there. Like, if you were watching porn in Medieval Times, that feels like the sort of like a dopamine like overload.
Yeah, or like a time travel conundrum. Like porn to...
What is that device, Miss Milady?
Right. Yeah, you're right. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Maybe he's watching like sort of, barn porn.
I will say, when I got the PS4 VR headset, I did want to see what VR videos look like. So I did have a USB stick of porn that I put on my PS4, and it did.
Oh, cool.
It did work on the headset. So
the USB porn. So this was like VR porn. This is like the sort of.
It was like so much more work than it was worth. I was like, but I honestly do not know what I did with that USB stick. Maybe it was left at Medieval Times.
It might be at Medieval Times for all we know.
Do not remember. So there is a rogue USB stick with VR videos from like 2014 out there.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. That's subversive. Playing porn on a PlayStation.
Yeah,
that feels pretty good. Yeah, there you go. Who needs VR porn when you've got Medieval Times right in front of you, though? What a pornography of the senses. Amazing. Yeah, that's great. I don't know about running into. Have you ever met anyone online that was like somebody you knew or somebody?
I had two ones. One was like,
okay.
I was a big
I
was a big fan of Leo Laporte, who was like the tech, like the tech guy of the 90s. He used to run it. Maybe he still does a thing. This Week in Tech, Like he's very famous.
Oh, yeah.
Very famous like tech radio guy. Like my dad turned me on to him as a kid. Like he had like a call-in show. It was great. He said what server he played World of Warcraft on. This was like 2005, 2006. So I made a character on that server, and I think like maybe I don't know, maybe that week once a day I would check, and I found him in the Barrens, and I went up to him and I like said hello, I'm a big fan. He did /wave, and then
my God,
I think the same thing. I think then on Twitter I screenshot and he was like, "Yep, that was me," or something like that. So that was adorable. And then another time I was playing VR chat during the pandemic, and I think I was playing with a friend. And then like she invited a friend of a friend, and it was this girl I like met at a convention that I really liked. And she was like, "Oh my God, Frank, do you remember me?" And I was so dorky. I was like, "Oh, I'll never forget." Like I was so dorky. I was like, "Oh, I'll never forget." But I was like, "Wow!" I kind of ran into this girl in VR chat, and I don't know. So that's it. That's all I remember.
This doesn't count, but whenever I was like friends with all of the GameSpot presenters and reviewers, like on Xbox Live Arcade, I had added them all as friends and stuff. And so whenever this is when I was living in Ireland and watching On the Spot and all their shows they used to put out. And whenever they used to do like a demo of a new game, multiplayer game, they'd usually need a bunch of people to jump in kind of thing, or we'd see a game going on and we'd jump in. So I used to always be like in the background of those ones, but I remember one that Justin Calvert, who was the reviews editor for a while, it was for GTA 4, and he was just showing off like Grand Theft Auto 4 multiplayer, and all of us were in voice chat and he wasn't, because he was like talking on the set, and we all basically decided, okay, everyone just kill Justin over and over and over again. We spent like the whole demo just hunting his ass down. I think we stopped after like 10 minutes because we felt like bad, but he was just like, he couldn't show off the game at all. But I used to always get a kick out of that. It was like, oh shit, like Gersman's playing in the game of Uno, I'll jump in there, or like these are all like celebrities to me. So I used to love doing all that shit, and they kind of still are. Like every once in a while we'll be like interviewing someone who, when we were up in who did we run into up at Valve? I forget. Every once in a while you meet some folks from that like era and you're like, oh shit, yeah. Or like, yeah, we were recently filming a different thing down in SoCal, and one of the folks involved on the PR side was a guy who worked at GameSpot for years and years who I'd never met before. So they're still like little mini celebrities to me. Mini celebrities to others, big celebrities to me. All right, that is a podcast. We filmed a documentary last week. We filmed down in Obsidian Entertainment a documentary about Pentiment, a fantastic game that was one of our 2022 games of the year. We interviewed Josh Sawyer and a bunch of awesome people down there. We drank some Pentiment beer with the crew. It was pretty good. Jeremy, did you have any more of those cans since you came back up?
I did. I drank one of them before the drive back because I figured an 8-hour drive.
Wow, let's get fucking sauced up.
No, not right before the drive. Because I figured an 8-hour drive of non-refrigeration might taint the flavor. I needed to see what it tasted like on its own merits. Yeah, it's good. It's the Baltazar's Vinox beer, I think it's called.
Vinox beer.
It's like a Christmas beer.
What was the name of the place we were drinking at again, Frank?
I think it's called Gamecraft, and it's in Laguna Hills, Laguna Woods.
Nice.
Yeah.
We'll have to go back. Next time we do it, we'll have to let the patrons know, because apparently a couple of them were at that bar.
Oh, really?
Didn't know that we were there. Yeah.
That's wild.
So I got some messages afterwards. We got patrons everywhere, man, especially in game dev and SoCal. I guess there's quite a lot down there. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. So we're going to jump into the edit on that in the next week or so. Return to Monkey Island will be out next week, Monday. I'm aiming for. That is the 29th. 90-minute documentary. Very proud of it. Bit of, I wouldn't say red tape, just a bit of like having to wait for everyone concerned to be cool. Mostly the big mouse. There was no right to reply on anything, but there was, just make sure everyone's all right. And so it took a little bit longer to get this thing. It's been mostly edited since like fucking early December, but it's just taking a little bit of time. So apologies for that. It's sort of part of the process. We knew going into it, and everyone's been super cool about it, and we're really happy with what we got. It's a great little retrospective if you're a fan of Monkey Island in general, if you've played the new game or if you haven't. Although there's probably a part of this one where we'll tell you to jump out if you don't want really big spoilers. And then we've got loads of fucking secret little projects going on. A lot of stuff that we'll hopefully be able to tell you about in the next little while. We're going to be filming a bunch of GDC. I'm filming a bunch in Sweden, probably in March. I'm still finalizing the dates on that because we're trying to hit a bunch of studios while we're over there, some of which I might have mentioned on today's podcast already. Yeah, we've loads going on. Some really big secret stuff as well that will be coming out later this year, and a bunch more in the next couple of months in Dwarf Fortress and loads of other bits and bobs. So keep your eyes peeled to the Noclip documentary channel for that. If you'd like to support our podcast, the work that we do here, please head over to patreon.com/Noclip. Go to patreon.com/Noclip Crew if you'd like to join our free Patreon over there to help us build out that thing and turn it into the little game sort of coverage. I'm trying to craft something into the sort of old school 2007 kind of vibe of games coverage with like features and shit like that. So we're going to be throwing up some new ideas over there and getting feedback on them in the next couple of weeks. But until then, I guess we'll see you next week. Jeremy, what are you for the rest of your day? Are you coming over?
I'm coming to your house right after this, and then
the hard drive.
I will be grabbing that from your hands, and then I will be color correcting 7 billion hours of footage from our.
You're right.
Yeah, for the next. I will be color grading for the next like 4 to 6 days. I don't know. So yeah, a lot of that, a lot of hanging out, and probably just color grading until my eyes bleed.
Man, love to see it. Frank, what about yourself?
I'm very excited for Infinite Wealth and Tekken 8, but the next like few days I will be doing game capture and just basically that. And the long-term project of it is when I was cleaning out my dad's home, I found all his home videotapes that were like VHS-C format, so like mini DV tapes. I ordered off Amazon like a mini tape to VCR converter so I can put it in a VHS, pop it in. So now at some point, kind of like with Danny's game tapes, I eventually want to like game capture VHS tapes because I was watching this footage and it's like there's so many John Wilson-esque moments. It's so funny, it's so sweet, and it's like very sad but also very cute. So I don't know. I want to like start basically just convert all of my dad's VHS home video stuff on digital, and then I don't know, and then figure out what to do from there. But even if I just start uploading them on my YouTube or whatever, but that's like a nice personal project and also a nice way of mourning or grieving. But video games and VHS tapes, very on brand for Noclip.
Excellent. Yeah, love to see it. Cool beans. Okay, we will be back next week. We'll see if we're talking about Palworld. See you then. Bye.